You are listening.
You are listening.
You're listening to
Do not
To Not Elsewhere.
Not Elsewhere.
Elsewhere
Classified.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast. On today's podcast, I have Kengia Sabree, Dr. Kengia Sabree. She is the academic chair for St. Petersburg College. So if this is your first time watching or listening to this podcast, welcome. Please make sure to check out our podcast on Apple Podcasts and also on YouTube. Please make sure to subscribe. Also, leave a rating, leave a review. Please comment on our video so that way our podcast gets noticed. I first connected with Kengia way back a long time ago. I would like to say 2015, 2016, when she had reached out to me to be part of the advisory board of an academic program that she was working for at the time. And I think she's also asked me to speak for her students at one point. And at another point, she actually reached out to me to offer me a remote teaching position, which never really panned out. We had connected in person at the State Association for Florida Health Information Management Association, and ever since we've had stayed connected, especially when we're talking about the HIM industry, HIM students, and just the industry in general. So in today's podcast, we really go over her career. She describes her transition from being in New York, being a student with DeVry University, becoming an HIM manager, and then working as an adjunct instructor, and then eventually becoming an academic chair for the HIT program for St. Petersburg College. So we get into that, and in the second portion of the podcast, which will be released next week, we discuss her academic her education background, where she went ahead and got her master's degree, but then right away got her doctorate's degree in education. And in the second part, you'll see how everything intertwines with her education. And then we also talk about the Qualified, which is her company that she has created along with other fellow team members to promote leadership, career skills for the HIM students and HIM professionals. So without further ado, here is part one of my interview with Kengia Sabree, Dr. Kengia Sabree. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast. I am very happy that we are able to record a podcast this week because I have a special guest. Her name is Kengia Sabree. How are you, Kengia?
I'm doing well, Brian. How are you?
Good. How are you? Well, it's dry here. Last week we tried to do a podcast, and we are in the peak portion of the hurricane season. And so it's been raining, and we live about an hour apart, right? So you're over in the St. Petersburg area. I'm in the Central Florida, right by Disney. And when she told me that it's raining, I'm like, wait, if it's raining there, it's going to come over here where I'm at. And I think we tried to do a podcast episode on a Monday. It was raining. I had bad connection. You know what happened was I had the Ethernet line on, but it wasn't connected. So everybody in the house, everybody in the house was streaming, I don't know, Disney Plus, whatever it might be. And I'm like, my wife at the end, she said, oh, wait, were you on a podcast? Because I was trying to stream something and I kept on cutting out. I'm like, well, thank you very much for letting me know that. And then we tried on a Tuesday and it was still raining. You're talking about like 70% rain. And so we decided to pull the plug for last week, and I substituted another episode. And then,
which was great, by the way.
Yeah, what was that? That was the student one, the solo episode, right?
I love that. Love that.
Yeah, those are great. And I know you're an educator too. We'll get into where you've been and where you are today, because I know you're an educator over at St. Petersburg College, correct?
I am,
As the
yes.
academic chair, right? So
Yep. Hmm.
we'll talk about that. And I just did a video actually comparing RHIT programs. And I don't know if you saw, I was
I
flipping through
did.
I was flipping through Kahim,
Yes.
and I picked the associate's program and I listed it. And I'm like, wait, I know the person who is the academic chair there. So
Yes, that's
uh,
me.
I was gonna do it, but then I picked Valencia College. Maybe I should have done yours, but I think this would
That's
be.
okay.
but
That's
it's
okay.
but it's similar, right? The
It is,
RHIT
yes.
programs.
And they have a great program director, Kelly Lewis. She's over there. She's fantastic. They do have a really good program.
Yeah. So I did that instead. I'm sorry, the mentoring session instead. And that was great. I think we need more of that. I think we'll talk about that as we get into your company, the Qualified.
Yeah.
I believe what you launched this year. But yes, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you to Mother Nature. there's no
Holding on
rain today.
strong, right?
And so let's just go ahead and get started with the first question, Kenja. Where did you come from and how did you get to where you are today?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Hey, we got a
So
lot of
where did
time.
I come from? Well, born and raised in the Bronx, New
Mm,
York.
mm,
I landed here in Florida just by way of the weather. Go figure,
mhm.
right? I One day we had a really bad winter storm. I looked at the map. I said, you know what? I'm moving. I said, I want to go to Florida. I don't want somewhere with the highest population. So
Mhm.
I ruled out Jacksonville. I ruled out Miami. Third highest population at the time, this was like 2008,
Oh,
2009,
okay.
was Tampa. So I said,
Mm,
boo, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm moving. So at that time, I had already had some experience in HIM. When I moved down, I was in the midst of my bachelor's program, going through a bachelor's program, a couple years already in the field, but it worked out perfectly for me. So since I've been in Florida, I've been focusing solely on leadership roles. So HIM supervisor while I was here, HIM manager, HIM director, and then I transitioned into education.
so you you started to take classes while you were in New York, or did you take classes while
Well,
you were in
okay. So
Tampa?
truthfully, at the time I was in New Jersey.
Mm,
So I'm a graduate of DeVry University in New Jersey. I
okay.
achieved my associate's degree there, and then I was in their bachelor's program online.
Okay.
So started online, and then I finished up while I was here in Florida.
Okay. All right. So kind of briefly go through, I guess, the director, the leadership positions, because once you moved up into your bachelor's, because this is going into the video that I just did, right,
Yes.
about the
Yeah.
it was perfect because if you guys haven't seen the YouTube videos, it was a long I wouldn't say long, but it's like it was a video that I just wanted to do for such a long time because people keep on asking about programs, about should I get an associate, should I get a bachelor's, should I get a master's? In your case, you have a doctorate, which I will definitely talk, we will chat into that. What when you finish your bachelor's, right, at DeVry, correct?
Hmm.
Okay. What did it give to you that what did you take from the bachelor's program that could translate? I think that's the key phrase, is translatable, transferable skills from the
Into the
classes
industry.
into the industry.
Into the
Yeah. So
industry.
what did
I
you take
love that
away?
question.
Yeah.
So for me, the takeaway was the leadership portion.
Mm,
That was the biggest takeaway. The leadership portion, of understanding how to implement and manage projects.
mm,
That's really when I started to get my hands dirty and focus on EHR implementations, something so focusing on like the systems, HIM systems and processes. But you mentioned something that I thought was key,
mm.
because in order to do that you have to be at a certain place in your life or your mindset, right? So a certain level of maturity,
Yeah.
and that was important. So when I finished up my bachelor's, that's where I was in my life. I was just like, okay, I had enough hands-on experience in the department. I'm ready to take this to the next level. I felt ready to lead my team.
Yeah, I think when I think I brought up my supervisor. I mean, I love her to death. She was my CDI supervisor for quite some time, but she graduated with an associate's, right?
Mhm.
And so when they pushed her from, they upgraded her from a supervisor to a manager, and that manager required a little bit more, right? She couldn't. I could tell that she needed more, right?
Right,
That
right.
you could not take from an associate's level program. So in the video that I did, you could see in the curriculum that there's nothing really to grasp from, like the tools that she needed, she couldn't take from her associates, right?
Oh,
And then from there, from the bachelor's, though, you could see like everything, the finance, the
right,
statistics, right? The
right.
stuff that
Learning to manage that budget, right?
yeah,
All of
yeah,
those things are key. But let me tell you this,
sure.
because um, I'm getting ready to launch early next year
Mhm.
a leadership program for
Sure.
HIM professionals. And this is why, because when I got into leadership, there wasn't a handbook. There wasn't somebody to train me. There wasn't somebody to say, this is how you need to lead a department. And yes, I had the degree,
Mhm.
but there were certain things that I still felt was missing. And thankfully, at that time, I had an organization who sent me to a supervisor's training,
Mhm.
but it was more so how to supervise people, how to have those difficult conversations. But the HIM stuff was all new to me. Like, yes, I've done it. And that's one of the things that I loved about transitioning into leadership, was because I was able to say, I've been where you were. I've done this. I was on production. So I know what it's like. And
Mhm.
to me, that was always important. I'm not
So
asking you to do something that I've never done myself.
correct. I've explained in previous podcasts that I was in a situation where in my first directorship that you have like you're in the role
Mhm.
and you realize the responsibility, but you have the tools, but you just don't realize that you can access you
It's
can
true.
access them,
It's
right? And
true.
so I locked myself in my office. I always refer back to an old HIM book, and I grabbed it and I said, I know this stuff. I know this stuff. I know what I need to do. I just need to figure out what it is and what's the first step. So let
Mhm.
me flip this question to you. In your leadership roles, were there times, or could you explain a time where you were in a role and you're like, okay, I need to figure this out? Because that's the thing with HIM professionals, at least from what I have understood, is that we are very good at being given a task, right? Because our program, the HIM program, is kind of mixed with everything. When you look at the curriculum, there is some computer classes, there's some business classes, there's some health services administration classes, there's of course your HIM classes, there's your medical classes, right? And so you're kind of torn apart in the program.
Because
And so
we're
when
that
you
bridge.
yes,
Mhm.
you're kind of, well, yeah, you're in the bridge, but you're like torn apart. You're like going like this, and you don't know which way to go because there's so many options in HIM. So going back to the question, was there a time where you're like, okay, I need to figure this out? Was there any type of project? Was there any type of scenario? Was there any type of task where you had to sit down and like, okay, let's start with square one and let's begin? So was there any type of event or situation that you had to deal with?
Plenty. Plenty. So one of my favorite jobs was the decedent coordinator.
Mhm.
So working with other departments when somebody dies, right? So
Mm,
handling those death certificates. I didn't know what I was doing or where to start, because in school, they talk a little bit about the birth certificate process and the
right.
importance of those things, but they don't really talk about the flip side.
Mm,
So that was one particular scenario that made me go back to my books. But not only that, when we converted to, at the time, we were on paper records. So when we converted to electronic health records, because I was the decedent coordinator, they asked me to build in Epic the post-mortem section. And I was just like, what is that supposed to look like? Like, what am I supposed to do here? Because one, yes, I've used other EHRs at that time in my life, but nobody ever asked me to build anything or to design anything. So this is why we have to have tons of stuff in our toolkit, right? Or in our tool belt. So working with someone at Epic to say, okay, what is this supposed to look like? I knew the process, so that wasn't the problem, but trying to translate that process into an EHR, create workflows, all of that was new for me. Completely new for me. And it made me go back to my books. It made me research other hospitals. It made me ask them for clients.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because people die everywhere. So I'm like, I know I'm not going to be the first person to build this. So let me see what this looks like. Who can I call at my neighboring hospital who also uses Epic to show me this? I can just pop in for a visit and see what they're asking me to do. And you can't be afraid to do that. I think sometimes we get into these roles and we can be so prideful, or we're afraid to say, I don't know, or I'm sure, or I'm unsure, or I'm not sure of the next step. It's okay when you're not. It's okay. You just need to figure it out, right? So let's figure it out. And that's what I did, and I encourage everybody to do that.
I think the first step is just admitting that you need help, and then asking for it, I think is the key. Even with students, because I know, when I did those mentoring sessions, they would come to me and like, I could sense like there's a bit of apprehension in students in asking. And so they think, if I ask, then it seems that I am going to look at them as if, or demean them in such a way that like they don't know. Bingo. But on the flip side, I would tell them like, look, I don't see it that way. I see it in a way that you are wanting to learn.
That's right.
And and I think for most students who believe that, who carry that feeling that they want to learn versus being afraid to ask, it will translate into better opportunities, right? It's a mindset. It's a certain mindset.
It is. And you know what? I think it takes courage. It takes courage to say, you know what? I need help. It's okay. And I welcome that too. But I have students all the time who are embarrassed, or we find it where sometimes you get out of school and you have a hard time recalling information because sometimes you go through classes so quickly, or it takes you, sometimes I teach for a 2-year program. Sometimes it takes people 4 years, 4.5 years to get through because they're working professionals. They're taking one class at a time. So you're asking them to recall information that they've learned in year 1, in year 2. So sometimes it just takes that gentle reminder. Yeah. So remember this textbook, remember that assignment, that's what I like to do. And they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, so let's go back there, so just trying to help them recall that information is really important too.
Yeah, I can attest to that as for students that are working, because I know the most, at least from what I understand, a lot of HIM programs from when I went was either at night, right? I went at night after work. Yes. On the weekends. It was never a day program for some reason, of course. But it was always at a 7:30 to 9:30, 10:30
oh my
at
goodness.
night. Yeah, yes. It was I don't know. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. And
it was designed for working professionals.
Exactly. Right. That's what it is versus any other program, because I have 2 older kids right now that are about to go into college. One is a senior now, one's a junior now.
Oh,
and
wow.
We're looking at colleges now, and I'm looking like, and they're asking me like, what does the schedule look like? when you finally get this done? I said, well, you never know, because when you first start, you, at least for the prerequisites, It can be in the morning, it could be at night, it could be on a weekend. So
Mhm.
people are chasing at least the prerequisite courses to be in the best classes with the best teachers, with the
It's
best
true.
time. And so it's hard to keep up with that.
It is. And you know what? Colleges, though, they're doing a really great job. I know we at St. Petersburg College, we are being flexible and trying to offer those various modalities because we understand, not every college student looks the same. We have students that range from age 27 or, well, earlier than that, but our average,
Mhm.
27 years old, so they're working, they may have families. So we try and structure our classes around that. But like you said, there's people are trying to get the best professors, best times, so they're looking them up. They're seeing what their peers are saying about them, and they're trying to get into those classes.
Right. Hey, everybody, if you are enjoying the podcast so far, please consider liking this video and also subscribing to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast YouTube channel so you can be notified for future videos. Also, please check out the Medical Coding Geek YouTube channel, where I also post videos on the medical coding, CDI, and HIM community. Also, check out medicalcodinggeek.com, where we offer a lot of services, including our Facebook groups. You can go to medicalcodinggeek.com/services. Check out our Facebook groups, including Medical Coding Geeks, the RHIT and RHIA exam support group, the CDI network. We have a marketplace where you can sell and buy your books. We also have the CEU hit list. If you're interested in free CEUs, I release a monthly list of free CEUs that I find on the internet. Also, you could follow us on social media, Not Also Classified. Everything is at NEC Podcast. For Medical Coding Geek, it's at MED Coding Geek. You could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and we are also on TikTok. If you are listening to this episode, please make sure to subscribe and rate our show on Apple Podcasts. All the ratings and the reviews help our show get noticed. Also, I wanted to take a moment to promote our partners. You could check them out at medicalcodinggeek.com/partners. They include the Haugen Consulting Group, RadRx, Project Resume, Renowned Talent, and so much more. And of course, you could find me, Brian Cui. My last name is spelled CUI on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's return back to the show. When I actually taught for DeVry. That was my first teaching gig. Yeah. Over in
That's
South
funny,
Florida.
they still haven't hired me yet. No.
Yeah, in South Florida, in Miramar, when very early on. I just graduated in 2000, because you mentioned the average age that go to the program.
Mhm.
And so I graduated in 2003, 2004. I was looking for, I don't know why, just a different bachelor's, maybe a biomedical informatics. Anyways, I went.
No way.
Yeah. And
that was my very first major.
Was it?
And it was too hard.
I was thinking about it, like, maybe should I go for? Anyways, I went to the session, right? And then, and I brought my wife. I just had my daughter a long time ago, and I'm like, maybe I just need to just get some education to kind of bring ourselves up, because we're just a young couple. I'm an HIM technician, whatever. I did that. I did the session, and then I'm like, I don't know about this. Anyways, the dean of the college in Miramar, Florida, contacted me and said, hey, I'm calling you because I noticed you came to our academic session for biomedical informatics. I said, oh yes, I did. But I'm not calling you for that. I'm actually calling you to for an opportunity because I saw that you have an RHIA, right? And so this was at a time, this was early in the time where I could teach as an RHIA for a bachelor's program, right? Very early on, because I know the statistics back then. I know it's changed since then, back in 2003, 2004, where about out of the entire HIM professionals, only 10% have master's degrees.
It's true.
Yeah,
it is true. And when I started teaching in HIM, I had a bachelor's. I had a bachelor's, and it wasn't until about 2011,
Yes, that's right.
2012,
That's right.
where they required it to be master's.
Hmm.
But since I was already teaching, I was grandfathered in. And at the
Yeah.
time, I was adjunct for St. Petersburg College.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was safe. Like, oh, okay, I can still teach with my bachelor's.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got the job, right? I said, oh, this is
Wow.
great, right? I think this is awesome. I might as well, because my wife says, you're becoming, his name is Professor Elton Cust. And so he's bald, he's from Trinidad and Tobago, he has very good charm, right? And he's now living, I think, in Georgia. And he said, I think you're becoming like Professor Cust. I said, maybe. So I took the position thinking like maybe that's my direction, to
Mhm.
be an academic, at least to give it a try. Anyways, so my first day, I thought I would play a trick, right? Because here I am, 24 years old, right? You told me the age is around 24,
Yes,
27.
yes.
So here I am I'm here 24 years old. I'm in a shirt and a tie, and I'm sitting in the back. I decided to sit. So my first day, I said, let me just sit in the back. And then all these students come in, they're sitting down, class starts, and then the students are like, where's the professor? I said, yeah, where is the professor? And then all of a sudden I got up and I started writing my name on the floor.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
I'm your instructor. I said, how old are you? These are like, either 20s, their 30s, their
Yes,
40s.
yes.
And they are like, you kidding me, right? I'm like, no, I'm your instructor. Because the way I guess most HIT or HIM programs work, at least early on, especially younger programs, they have one instructor
Right,
for
right. Hmm.
everything. And then you mentioned about around like 2010 with the required masters. I actually I went from DeVry to ITT Technical Institute.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So that was a long time ago, before they closed their
Yeah,
or they
don't
closed their
laugh.
program.
Don't laugh because I know somebody who went to that program.
I
But yeah,
I
yeah. And
taught.
they were also teaching for they graduated from there and then they started teaching there. And then
Mhm.
shortly thereafter they
Yeah,
closed.
yeah, it was
Mhm.
just, I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I actually had left that before they closed the program abruptly. And then I
Wow.
went to Colorado Technical Institute, which was my
Okay.
first online teaching position, for their what they call their associates in medical billing and coding, right?
Okay.
So I think the program just didn't get accredited by Kahim, and they kind of closed that program down, right? So that's why I brought up that video. I'm like, wait a second, you know. I think that's why it finally clicked, and
Right.
an associate's in
Right.
the medical building and coding is not an accredited HIT program. And
Right.
so I decided to create that video. Anyways, they moved me into a bachelor's of health services administration, and I
Okay.
was teaching courses there. And then all of a sudden, they kept on changing leadership. That's the thing with online colleges. They change leadership, change leadership, change leadership. And so the last leadership, what had happened is like, okay, I suggest you get your master's. And then she left, right? And then didn't tell me why. Right. And then
Okay.
all of a sudden the classes that I was receiving kept just started to drop. I'm like, where are my classes? Where are my classes? Where are my classes? And then eventually they said, Brian, we had a new change, and that was the time that you mentioned
See,
the
yeah.
date. This
Hmm.
is now for those that are teaching bachelors, you now have to have a master's degree. And
Yeah.
so there were many times that I was like, man, I should have, like, I've I've interviewed, let's say, for example, Marlene Marino, right?
Hmm.
She taught for an education program, knowing that they would reimburse her for her master's degree,
See,
right? And
how
so
strategic is that?
right. So she kept on getting masters, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I never told anybody, but I kept on kicking myself in the butt. I'm like, oh my gosh,
See,
you know how many opportunities I had to get a master's at DeVry, at IT. I don't know the
oh, it's
ITT
true.
Tech.
Yeah, it's
At
true.
ITT Tech offered masters at Colorado Technical University, where I was there for like a couple
See, you could have taken
years.
advantage of
I could
that.
have taken it then. And so So that's a lesson for people who are in who are
But
teaching.
it's okay because look at you now. You found your name and that matter.
Yeah, yeah. It's never too late though. I always think,
It's
is it
not.
is it too
It's
late?
not.
No, and I'm at a position now in terms of salaries, salary wise, like, look, I could literally pay it for myself. It's not a problem to
See?
me. I don't have to
Right.
worry
That's what
about,
I did.
yeah, I don't have to worry about somebody. That's the thing too, is like if you have an employer, real talk, if you have an employer reimburse you, you are like committed to that employer for a while. So
That's
if
right. That's right.
there's an agreement in terms of tuition reimbursement that you have to deal with. So if you're at a point where you want to have a little bit of freedom after your education, you want to take it somewhere, for example, like create a business or move to another employer, then you need to have that financial stability to include yourself to have a master's.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Bingo. Take that into consideration. So if you're like, okay, well, I do have 3 years after getting this to commit to this organization, great, take advantage.
Mhm.
Don't get those student loans. But if you're like, nope, as soon as I get this, I want to explore other opportunities, or like you said, create my own business, then really consider financing that on your own if you
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about it because my
Absolutely.
wife is she's gonna finish her bachelor's for her nursing degree
Mhm.
at Western Governors University,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So she actually
Okay.
has
Yes,
a
they
she
have an
actually yeah,
HIM program.
yeah, she no her nursing degree, her bachelor's in nurse. She has an HIM degree. We graduated together. And then she went to nursing, got her
Yeah.
associate's degree. She's now finishing her bachelor's degree at Western Governors. And then she says, I'm going to go to the health informatics program at Western Governors. And I said, good, finish that program, come back to me, give me your notes so that way I can go to Western Governors and complete
Yes,
my right
right.
behind
Make
you.
it that much easier for me.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
That
my
would be awesome.
my
That would be
kid my
awesome.
kids are junior senior, right? They're a part of what's called an international baccalaureate program, and so my son's now the junior, and so my eldest daughter always comes to him like, what do you need? I know what it takes
That's
for
see,
as a junior, let me help you out, and it's great. and
I love
so
that.
and so I'm like, okay, maybe my wife will do that with me, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe I might have to
So
do some extra
question, do
chores
either
or
of your
whatever.
children
Go ahead.
or buy them from her?
Yeah. I have to do something. I have to do something, buy an extra gift, take her to dinner, something. I don't know. It'll work out,
Yes,
but
yes.
we'll get through the
Do either
let's
one of your children want to explore HIM?
That's the reason why I took them to UCF, right? For them to look at it. But when we went the first time, it was just a campus tour. So we have to schedule it again, I think in November.
Oh, okay.
But I did a podcast with them
Okay.
and I asked them, what do you think I do? And all they think I do is I sit over here, over in this desk here, and they just see me look at screens, copy and paste stuff, yell and scream because because of stuff that I see on audits. And I don't think they realize what I do, but I wanted her at least to look at it. But the thing with my eldest, she's
Right.
not really into health per se. She is
Okay.
into computer science. That's why I had Shirley
Okay.
Moy
All right.
actually come in and talk about it. And she's actually connected my daughter with her, Shirley Moy,
Oh, that's awesome.
from Swift Audit, to talk about computer science. And so she's interested in it, but she's also interested in journalism.
Oh,
So I'm like,
okay.
okay. I said, well, you know what? Either way, whichever way you go in either computer science, she's thinking either security and
Mhm.
privacy. I said, that's great. Apply
That's
that to the health
see,
sector.
that's
Okay.
yes.
If you go into journalism, communications, media, whatever it may be, do it in healthcare, right? Because there's a lot of talk, a lot of things to talk about
Right.
there. So
Right.
regardless, I'm going to steer her in such a way that it may be there, and it may be, if it doesn't work out because it's in a health sector, it may lead her to HIM. So I'm kind of
It's true.
strategically.
I'm thinking data analytics. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. She
Yeah.
may find herself here.
Yeah. It's like if it's kind of like the plan A, plan B, plan C, right? So if it doesn't
Right.
work out, plan C,
Okay. All right.
let's get it there. And now, at least she has an understanding of what's going to happen there. But I can see her, she's taking computer science courses now for high school. And then she's probably going to take her pre-calculus over the summer after she graduates and kind of jump in and finish those prereqs. So,
Okay.
you never know. You never know. Let's get back to
It's
you.
true.
I want to know, how did you get into teaching? Because you're currently the academic chair for St. Petersburg College. How did that transition from working in leadership? I see a bunch of management positions. I see a director position, another director position, and privacy officer. How did you turn? Because I've seen a lot of professionals do that, where they used to work in the field, then finally find themselves into academia, becoming a lead in the academic program. So how did you find working in or teaching? How did you find teaching just in general?
Well, initially I just wanted to teach adjunct to make some extra money.
Yep.
That was
Okay.
really it. And I wanted to share my knowledge. That's
Mhm.
it. So then I started doing that and I loved it. I just loved it so much. And I was about 5 years in
Wow.
when I got a call from the program director and she said, "Would you ever consider doing this full time?" And I said, maybe. I said, "You know what? It's the only job that I haven't quit yet." She
Yeah.
said, "Okay, well, if you want to," she said, "I'm retiring, but you have to go back to school and get your master's degree."
Mm.
So I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay." So that's what I did. I took 1 year off of teaching and I went and I got my master's degree. And it worked out so perfectly. Like I literally finished um, maybe a couple weeks before they posted the job.
Wow.
So as soon as I finished, I applied for the job. Was perfect. It was really perfect, but I had no intentions of pursuing a master's degree. Um, I just didn't. So it was only because of that opportunity that I decided to pursue a master's degree.
What masters did you get? I'm very curious.
Oh, so it's a master's of science in instructional design and technology.
What does that
And that
mean?
was intentional because I was I knew I was going to be a teacher,
Okay.
right? But it's a degree that's in education, but
Okay.
it
Okay.
teaches you how to design instruction. So
Mm.
curriculum, it was the best degree. And I love HIM, don't get me wrong, but it was really the best degree because I learned so much. I learned how people think, I learned how people learn. I learned all these funky tools for delivering instruction. Because I knew very early on when I was teaching HIM that there was something that I was missing and I just couldn't put my finger on it.
Hmm.
And it was because I never taught before,
Mm.
so I'm delivering concepts. And when students are like, "I still don't get it," I'm just like, "Okay, now what?"
Hmm.
So that degree really taught me how to make those connections or how to try anyway.
Yeah. Right. No.
So,
Right. I think when I first taught at DeVry, I had no clue. Like, how am I gonna, how am I gonna present this material?
right,
How am I going to teach this? And the
right,
only thing that I knew,
right,
guttural, like instinctual, is to take the curriculum and just show it to them. And you're given a curriculum, right? And
right.
you go week by week by week. What are you going to talk about? Of course, you have to prepare for that lesson. And I think what the way I approached it is I try to translate it to me as a student. How was I as a student when I was
Mhm.
receiving this information? And how did it work for me? Because I did okay. I got A's and B's in the class. So how can I help students achieve an A and B in that class by helping them understand how I took the information, how I decimated the information, interpreted the information, and applied the information, right? So I try to do it backwards, right? In such a way, like, okay, here's the information. Let's kind of break it down. Here's what I look at. Here's what you need to look at in order to understand this concept. So I kept on doing a lot of diagrams, flow sheets, arrows, and stuff like that.
Right.
And try to relate to, gosh, I only had limited experience, right? So you can't talk from experience, right? To teach it. That was the major flaw in my teaching, because I only had like 1 year. 1 year.
See?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's true. It is very hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And the only thing I could,
but it's fun, and I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No. I'll go ahead. What I was gonna say is, like, the only thing I could grasp on is my experience as a student. Right. And now, doing the podcast and doing webinars, and after doing healthcare for 20 years, you have a lot to pick from, right? Your stories, your experiences,
right,
and stuff like
but
that.
Even being a parent, think about how you teach your kids.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I always say the best degree you can have is being a parent. because when you graduate, I don't know if you necessarily graduate from parenting, but at least I would like to say the first 10 years of parenting. So I have an advanced degree in parenting, and handle at least with 3 kids at the same time, just trying to manage their time, trying to manage their attitudes, trying to manage their moods. And I think when you translate that into leadership, I mean, shoot, I've done a directorship only one time, right? And so that was for 1 year. But let's say, for example, I got interviewed for another leadership opportunity, and I'm going to tell them the truth. I only have 1 year, but here's something that I can take from is that I have 3 kids.
Yes.
Okay. I have 3 kids. They are going to graduate soon. Here's my experience on bringing them up, what I had to manage in each of the phases of their lives. How did I make it work? How did I make it work with my schedule and stuff like that? That's sort of things that you want to bring up.
And you are leading them. You're leading them. And that's what I tell my students all the time, because they say, I have no healthcare experience. This is going to be my first job. Okay. So we need to talk about those transferable skills that are around you every day, just like that. So that's a perfect example.
So once you got your master's, let's get back to you. Once you got your master's, then you became the academic chair. So from that point on, what happened after that? So you're currently now the academic chair. And I see that another question that I want to ask is, at one point did you start to get your doctorate in education? Because you would be my first doctorate guest. I have doctors before, but not medical. I have had medical doctors, but not a doctor in education on the program. So you would be my first doctorate guest. So kind of explain, once you got into the role, I guess, when did you get to the point that you decided that you needed a doctorate? So there you have it. That is part 1 of my interview with Dr. Kengia Sabree. You could check out Kengia on LinkedIn. You could check out The Qualified by going to the website www.the-qualified.com.
medicalcodinggeek.com